The tripod of work is one of our central concepts and appeals to people with a broader sense of whether we're dealing with people, whether we're dealing with an organization, whether we're dealing with our context. It's not boxing things into an off-the-shelf, or if you're looking at people, you need to look at this tool, or if you're looking at your organization, you need to consider this approach. So the tripod is about the relationships, I think, that are sustained and developed by individuals and by an organization over time. And when we talk about the tripod, it is a way of working and a way of ensuring that, if you like, these relationships are kept in sync. And how do we do that? That's very difficult. There's lots of tools out there that will profess to do this. But I think what attracts our clients to the concept of the tripod is there are very clear ways of how I task individuals, or how the organization is tasked, how we review and tend and monitor what's going on in the organization, and also how we trust our people, or how we trust ourselves as an organization, which has to do with judgment. So it's a model that instantly appeals, that there is a sense that the working relationships, both individually and as an organization, will be more sustainable, will be more optimal, will work in an environment where these three issues are dealt with and worked with. It's difficult to then translate that into reality, because instantly what a client will often ask is, how do I measure this? How do I know about these things you talk about, tasking, tending, and trusting, and the approach, which is to create balance in working relationships? How do we do this? One of the ways we do it is through a diagnostic called the Working Relationships Appreciation, which is able to look, again, it's not a evaluative, it's almost not a measurement approach. It's to advise organizations and people on room for improvement. So it's not as though it's black and white, there's no tasking going on in this organization, or tasking is done very poorly. It's rather, how can this be improved? And I think that people like the sense of that, of not just offering an approach or a model that is going to tick boxes and say right, wrong, or good, bad. And I think in the tripod, it's a very fundamental way that we view people and the organizations in which we work. There is a deep understanding of what it means to lead people, to be accountable for the delivery of their work, for example, and their performance, as well as how we entrust people to use their judgment and discretion within the appropriate context of that environment, or of their capability. So I think the tripod, certainly for me, encapsulates a very core essence of Bioss that we can only start exploring once we get down to, well, let's look at the issue of tending or tasking, or let's look at the issue of judgment. What are we talking about in the decisions that have to be made according to these roles, according to these jobs as you see them? What is the leadership around that? And I think a lot of the systems leadership work comes into complementing the tripod, where we're able to look not so much at the hard measures, performance, capability, the work, the outputs, the accountabilities, but also some of the behaviors and some of the mythologies and some of the systems and organizations that sometimes drive behavior that would appear to be not optimal or undesired. And I think organizations quite unconsciously will think of their organization performing in a certain way as to do with people, for example, whereas actually it's the way the organization is structured and the systems in the organizations that are driving those behaviors. So I think with the core of the tripod work, which in many ways is part of the systems leadership work as well, is to try and look at the balances of this, try and understand what it is that drives people and organizations, and to ask questions about that, to ask quite open questions and not be punitive around good or bad or excellent or horrible, but say this is what could possibly be improved in your organization, depending on what it is you require.